fast do you think we can get?
During the closed session, the whole thing. I told him we gotta make sure everybody stays there.
That's a picture of street later.
Exactly.
Yeah, it really
I was like,
is. That's
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the board's July work session. It is 6 o'clock and it is 106 degrees outside, so glad everyone's inside in the air conditioning. Tonight, the Board of Trustees is meeting in a called work session board meeting. The board welcomes and appreciates comments and input from the community. Open forum is provided at each meeting to allow the public to address the board. There will be 2 open forums tonight. Open forum number 1 is to hear requests regarding agenda items only. Open forum number 2 is to hear requests or make comments regarding non-agenda items and will be heard at the end of the meeting. Those addressing the board are asked to limit their comments to 3 minutes per meeting. The speaker should identify his or her name, group affiliation, if any, and make a brief presentation with an identified solution if one is sought. Remarks should be addressed to the board as a whole. Oral presentations may not include charges against any employee or board member by name. It is my responsibility to determine if a person addressing the board has attempted to resolve the concern informally or through the district's complaint policies. If not, the speaker will be directed to follow the appropriate policy. The board requests that all presentations be made in a courteous, respectful, and professional manner and asks that speakers monitor their own behavior. If you wish to speak during one of the open forums, please fill out one of the cards located on the table in the entry hall. Now I will read the correct thing that I was supposed to read. I will call this meeting of the Hurst-Euless-Bedford Independent School District to order. Let the record show that a quorum of board members is present, that this meeting has been duly called, and that notice of the meeting has been posted in accordance with Texas Open Meetings Act, Texas Government Code, Chapter 551. All right. Dr. Harrington, do we have any superintendent's comments?
No comments today.
Any clarifications?
None at this time.
Okay. We are ready for open forum number 1. No cards. Thank you. All right, we do not need a closed session at this meeting. So we will start with reports and presentations. Disbursements for the month of June 2022. Any questions on disbursements? All right, 6.02, employments, resignations, and retirements. You have something to talk about there?
I just wanted to give you an update on hiring. I know that's a question we like to hear about after our break. So we've hired 217 teachers, including about 32 of those were folks who did not meet requirements last year but have gotten those requirements over the summer. We've been able to hire them back. And then our professional non-teaching, we've hired 49. Paraprofessionals, 38. So we've hired 304 employees in 14 weeks. As far as the question I know Mr. Cargile wants to know, we have 47.5 teacher vacancies at this time. And so we have 20 elementary, 27.5 secondary, but I can tell you that I saw about 6 recommendations come through my queue today, and we will be reviewing those and getting those hired. So I anticipate we'll be able to get a lot of those filled, but just wanted you to have an update on where we are. I also wanted to take this opportunity to let you know, now that we've completed the school year, that we did have 28 people who took advantage of receiving the reimbursement for notification of a retirement. And I know that's information you all like to have. So 28 of our employees were eligible and received a reimbursement.
All right, any questions on any of that information or on the employments, resignations, and retirement report? Okay, item 6.03, the 2022-2023 restricted leave calendars.
So you will recall, I think it was my meetings are running together. I think it was 3 meetings ago that we did revise one of our board policies at the suggestion of TASB because they caught that we were bringing our restricted date calendars to you for approval when in fact they needed to just be information. So this is an information item, but what I will let you know is that we do have a process through which individuals can request a day for something that meets our one-time life event definition. And this year we actually have a Google form they'll be able to do that through, and we've already been receiving those. So these are the restricted day calendars. Also for our elementary, junior high, and high school, I'm sure you noticed there were 2 different versions. We've tried to create a calendar that mirrors the actual instructional calendar for ease and convenience. So any questions about our restricted dates?
All right. Thank you, Ms. Tuttle. Communities and schools report. Has Ms. Gardner made it yet?
I know that she's attending, but I just texted her. She's not yet arrived.
Okay. Well, we will hold that off until she's able to get here and then look forward to hearing what she has to say. All right. Ms. Hopkins, the 2022-2023 Hybrid Learning Pilot Program.
Good morning, or good evening, sorry. It's been such a fast day today. So I'll speak with you today about our Hybrid Learning Pilot Program. No, you're fine. Thank you. So in September 2021, Senate Bill 15 was signed in, and it gave the opportunity for us to have local remote learning for students delivered through synchronous and asynchronous instruction. The enrollment is capped at 10% of the total number of students of your LEA, and it did provide minimum academic standards for student participation. Within that, it said that districts had to have a C rating or higher. They had to include at least 1 STAR assessed grade level, provide families with an on-campus option, administer assessments and teach in the same manner as we would for our in-person or face-to-face students. We also needed to comply with all federal and state policies, and that we had to provide professional development for our hybrid teachers and instruction may not be delivered concurrently. Students also have to meet some minimum standards. They need to have met the satisfactory requirements on the STAR test. They have to have good attendance, and they need to earn grades of a C or higher in foundation curriculum courses. So our vision here within HEB ISD is to fulfill the mission and the vision of our district by providing personalized, data-driven, anytime, anywhere instruction for students. So really looking at those opportunities for our students and providing them through new and different ways and reimagining what hybrid learning could look like for our school. Not a response to a pandemic, but how do we provide curriculum through innovative processes? So for our pilot program, we are looking at offering 2 hybrid learning options during the 2nd and 3rd trimesters. We will start small with both of our high schools. Trinity High School will offer a course in English 4 and in economics, and Bell High School will offer speech and health. All of our hybrid learning teachers will receive support through our hybrid learning coach, Jeff Blankenship, through Education Elements, which is our partner from TEA, and they'll also work with our curriculum department. Now, these courses were selected by the principals of both of the high schools, and they were identified for 2 different reasons. One, because the principals felt that they had teachers in those courses who were early adopters with online instruction. They were able to teach in a way that met the needs of the students. We also wanted to look at what are our possibilities within this district. When we look at health and speech at Bell High School, we're looking at a variety of ages. We're looking at a variety of skill for our students, and we're looking at instruction that's not core content. And then when we look at English 4 and economics at Trinity, we're looking at courses that are a bit more rigorous in nature, older students, so we can really begin to assess whether moving into a hybrid option for our students would be better as students are older. Is it something that we might like to provide to younger students? And it really just gives us that flexibility and the opportunity to explore how we can best meet the needs of all students in our population. This is something of a sample schedule for our pilot program. So our vision for trimesters 2 and 3 of next year would be to provide these hybrid classes during our first period. So if students didn't need to be on campus, if they had other transportation, they could arrive for second period. If they do use bus transportation, they could come and have a place on campus, such as maybe the library or another classroom that they can use and report to study and work through course materials. So for the pilot, we're going to look at first period, and then students would continue with a traditional schedule, second through fifth period. And just for note, our official attendance reporting time is second period. So as far as funding and things of that nature, we'll still be in compliance.
So in terms of the synchronous learning, that would be happening on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday? Is that
Yes,
correct?
it could. This is just an example, but yes. So synchronous face-to-face traditional instruction Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Tuesday, Thursday, the students would be provided an asynchronous learning opportunity. It could be in the form of collaborative group work online. It could be in the form of videos or projects that need to be completed. It could be in the form of research. It could look very varied from what we might have seen during our pandemic online learning.
Okay, so Monday, Wednesday, Friday is in the classroom.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
So I have a question. I don't know if you're taking questions at the end. Should there become an attendance problem, would there be in-person classroom availability for economics on Tuesdays and Thursdays?
There would. If there was an attendance problem, that's part of what we are working with Education Elements to put together is what is our safety net and our tiered intervention strategy for these students. So if a student began to have an attendance problem or if their grades were slipping, the requirement is that we have an in-person traditional economics class that we can move them into out of our hybrid learning program.
Thank you.
Again, we just want to make sure that we have a safety net for every student. Our proposed HEB timeline, in April of 2021, we were selected by TEA, and then we have begun working with our partner Education Elements, which is the consulting firm that is working with us and a lot of schools in our region. Today is our board update, and in August, we will begin coaching the hybrid teachers. We will meet with stakeholders in September to discuss what hybrid learning looks like for their students and to allow parents to receive information to determine if they would like to opt in or out of the program. And then in November, trimester 2 will begin and our pilot will launch. A future consideration, just for us to remain aware of, is that this bill will expire September 1st of 2023. So right now, we have a Texas Commission on Virtual Education that we are paying close attention to so that we can see how they will be moving forward with these opportunities for students in the state of Texas. The anticipated report date is December. Any additional questions?
Dr. Hoppins, just one or two more.
Sure.
This looks neat. Should participation be greater than 10%? Is there going to be like a waiting period, or walk me through what that would look like for students or parents to choose this?
So since we are only opening it up to these 4 high school classes, it's 10% of our entire district.
Got it.
So we feel very safe in the fact that we will not reach that at this time.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah.
So the Monday, Wednesday, Friday, they come to school as normal,
Yes,
have
sir.
their normal first period. Then Tuesday, Thursday, they have the opportunity to do that asynchronous whenever they want. So there's no, they don't have to be in front of a computer for first period, because there's no way if they did it at home that they'd be able to get the second period, right? So
Right. If they wanted to sleep in that day and stay up a little later and finish their work, they could.
okay.
So do they have to do it on Tuesday or Thursday, or is it a set time that they could do on another day?
So that is ours to develop. The state has not said, because of the nature and the way that we are doing a hybrid program instead of a fully asynchronous program, the state does not mandate what that looks like. So I envision that we would have a couple of options. Students will have an assignment due, but then they may also have work that they complete that day in preparation for a presentation in class on the next face-to-face day, or a final product that they'll be delivering and working on in class. So there will be accountability for learning the curriculum and the content. It may not be in the form of an actual project that they submit on that day at that time.
Okay. So I know the state has set some eligibility requirements. Are we going to adopt those same, or are ours going to be more stringent? Have we looked at what the eligibility requirements are going to be to participate in this?
So that is our next step after this, is to refine our eligibility requirements. Right now, based on the fact that our courses will be offered to a variety of students, we will definitely hold to our attendance requirements because we feel very strongly that that's important. The determination can be made of whether we want students to have grades higher than a C in their core foundation classes and what that would look like, especially when you're looking at a class that might include sophomore level students for health and speech or something of that nature. We'll need to probably set some flexible standards between English 4 and economics versus health and speech.
So this is a pilot program. How are we going to gauge the success? Like, what does a successful pilot program look like to you, such that it would say we need to continue this and roll it out more
Absolutely.
broadly?
So we've established a set of metrics with education elements, and part of our metrics will be, especially for English 4 and economics, is gauging based on our assessments, how did our hybrid students do in comparison to our traditional students. We can also use those same metrics for health and speech, but determining based on assessments that we give within the classroom, like our common formative assessments, using that data and then comparing it between hybrid and face-to-face students, and especially if a teacher has a hybrid course and a face-to-face course, being able to compare between the two teachers as well. So that's one of them. There is one other metric that we've also established, and a third that includes a student survey just based on how prepared they feel for the class, some more qualitative information.
Is there an opportunity perhaps for, since it's a pilot, for us to do some crossover between the schools? Could a Trinity student take the health offered through Bell if it fit in their schedule and it was something that they needed?
We have not discussed that yet. I think that that's a great idea. We haven't discussed it. We also discussed in the future the probability of the same classes at both high schools so that we could look at providing some teaching partners and partnership for the staff that will be teaching these hybrid courses. But we haven't ventured into that, so we can when we start meeting with our counselors when they come back.
You know, it might just be the ticket for a student who needs that class at that time and fits all the, you never know.
It would be an interesting use of the Viewinger also, is we could schedule some classes through the Viewinger, and then our normal way we schedule classes of both campuses can attend those classes. Yeah. So there are a lot of options. The other piece that I do think is interesting is, and I understand why they did it, but TEA had to put in some very unique rules during shutdown for attendance that created some oddities within true hybrid learning. And so we won't have those parameters on this as far as, the daily attendance and turning in work every day, So this will let them teach these classes in a more, normal way within a virtual class. Yeah. So we had a lot of constraints that actually didn't help, but I understand why they were put in place at the time, but they didn't help us what we were trying to accomplish.
And we'll begin working with the teaching staff again in August. So we have the entire first trimester that our learning coach will be partnering with those teachers and meeting with them regularly to discuss, okay, here's what you accomplished in a traditional face-to-face class today. How would we work to twist this for second semester? What is the plan? And so we'll be building these courses along the way instead of waiting until we start working through the second trimester to work with our teachers.
And who's responsible for creating and curating all the asynchronous lessons?
The teachers will, again, be responsible for their lesson design using any HEB ISD curriculum that is available. Okay. And then they will work with our learning coach just as normal. And then we'll support them in how they can flip their classroom.
Because that seems like a very important part is in terms of this being a pilot, if you want to scale it in the future, having those asynchronous parts already developed and
Yes.
so they can be shared amongst many teachers and, I mean, that seems like that's part of the curriculum. I mean, that's, those asynchronous parts already, videos or however it's put together is part of the curriculum, and it makes it that much easier to do it for more students in the future, but kind of have to start day one to get it right.
Well, and it also gives us some flexibility. During the pandemic, a lot of our teachers taught the same way because that's the best that we knew how. And this does give us some flexibility for teachers to maybe utilize their learning types, their learning styles, and the styles of their students with the flexibility that they have for days. So how would they best like to present their curriculum to their students? And would they prefer to do their direct teach on a face-to-face day and then provide the collaborative learning pieces on their asynchronous days, or flip-flop?
Okay.
So we're going to start parent meeting and information sessions in September. What is going to be the messaging? I mean, if we're reaching out to parents, why do they want to do this? Why do they want their kid in it? Have we thought about the messaging and talking to them about why they would want to do this? It's going to be a fit for some. It's not going to be a fit for all.
Exactly.
I want to make sure that the messaging makes sense, that we're getting the message out on why we're doing this.
Right.
Because, I think there are many parents who are going to think, oh, I would really want my kid to do this. But there are others who are going to say, why would I even consider this? And it might be a fit for them, but they don't even know it.
Right. So to start off with, especially with our older students, talking about how post-secondary education looks, whether you're looking at a vocational program or you're looking at a 2 to 4 year traditional college program, all of those opportunities offer some kind of virtual learning. So starting to create that opportunity for students to learn in a hybrid format will provide that safety net. So with some of our students, we'll talk about what does the future look like and how can we support you through this. Another option is just providing an opportunity and messaging to parents for students who desire a different way to learn. So we've been working with Education Elements on creating some questions. Does your student, prefer to learn in groups? Does your student, some of those surveys that you've seen before, utilizing that survey information and then helping guide parents in almost, there was another school district that used a flow chart, and so the parents could work through the flow chart to determine if their students would be a great candidate for our program. So what we've been working on with Education Elements is not only our face-to-face messaging, but also our print, our media messaging as well, so that we can provide ways that parents could see the information and begin to wonder, okay, I'd like to know more information about this, and then we'd follow that up with either direct conversations through our school counselors or through some group meetings, town hall style Q&As.
All right, any more questions?
I'm excited to see some data on how this comes together.
I'm excited as well.
Thank you, Dr. Hopkins. We appreciate the information and appreciate the board having so many questions for you because this is all new to us. So we're excited to see how it goes.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so we're going to jump back up to 6.04, Communities and Schools Report. Welcome, Ms. Garner.
Okay. Yes. Thank you. All right. Good evening. Thank you, President Romero, board members, Dr. Harrington. I appreciate you allowing me to come and speak to you this evening. So I want to do a really quick overview of our organization for anyone who might be less familiar, although I think probably pretty much everybody's familiar in the room. But the mission of Communities in Schools is to surround students with a community of support, empowering them to stay in school and achieve in life. And the way we do that is by hiring and placing qualified, caring professionals onto school campuses full-time. We have two main models of support. The first one is case management provided by our licensed social workers. They either have a bachelor's or a master's in social work and are licensed by the state. And we do also hire a team of clinical social workers. So those are the ones who have gone on and gotten their supervised counseling hours and have achieved a clinical licensure to be able to do one-on-one mental health counseling with students. So for every district that we partner with, and we currently are partnered with 11 school districts throughout the greater Tarrant County area, as well as Parker, Johnson, and Hood counties now, either have case management solely or have also incorporated the mental health counseling piece as well. And again, our focus is on meaningful relationships that transform student lives. Those relationships are key, relationships between the social worker and student, and a level of trust that's built between the student and their family and the social worker. So for our case managers, they are going to provide services for up to a caseload of 90 students per campus, and those are the ones that are receiving the full-time intensive case management support, what we consider our Tier 3 level of support, but we also serve a much larger number of students for Tier 1 and Tier 2 supports. Those are, Tier 1 would be campus-wide, so if a social worker were working with school staff members to do, say, a parent engagement night. And so that's going to touch a lot more students than just their main caseload. Tier 2 would be small groups. So if a social worker begins to work on a campus and notices that there are a number of students that share maybe some similar struggles, an example might be needing to have sessions on bullying or anger management, or a number of students have a parent incarcerated. Those are really great opportunities for us to work with students in small group settings and bring in some of our partner agencies to address some of those issues with small groups of students. And then again, we have clinical counseling support, and that's something that the HEB district added this last school year for the first time, and that places clinicians on campuses to be able to focus on a subset of students that have been identified with mental health needs who need access, easy, free access to mental health counseling supports in the school right where they are. And each one of our clinicians serves a rolling caseload of up to 30 students at a time. And if they, the metrics that we use to measure the success of that program, as opposed to being more academic in nature, would focus on clinical goals. And so if a student needs to see that counselor for the entirety of the school year in order to make progress toward clinical goals, they will. If they end up needing only a few sessions and the counselor is determined that they're in a good place to roll that student off, they can then roll another student on. And I always like to show a kind of this graphic of our theory of change for our national model. So the idea is, we're not providing tutoring, we're not providing academic supports, we are providing more of those social and emotional and mental health supports, which do affect students' ability and capacity to learn and perform and succeed. So we always say we're providing non-academic supports that have positive academic outcomes for students. So I wanted to provide, this is a snapshot of the supports that we provided in the school year that we just wrapped up. So again, we provided full-time case management for 12 of your campuses. We had 4 full-time mental health counselors who were providing clinical support. We were contracted to serve a minimum of 850 students for full-time case management. We were able to serve a total of 904 throughout the school year. And we had a total of over 2,600 parent contacts. And then our total number of wraparound student service hours for all of our campuses was 14,643 hours. We had 1,549 clinical treatment hours. Those are those one-on-one mental health counseling sessions. We were able to conduct 54 risk assessments. And again, a risk assessment is performed whenever there is mention or the potential threat of a student harming themselves or someone else. So a risk assessment is something that could be conducted either by one of our program managers or one of our mental health counselors. So we conducted 54 risk assessments this last year. And services for basic needs were just over 3,100. And I listed a couple of specific examples there. So we were able to support a family from Venezuela that was here under political asylum with rental assistance. We do maintain an internal family crisis fund. And the idea of that is, if we've reached out in the community to our partners and we're trying to get various needs addressed, a lot of times we are able to do that with our partner agencies. But if there's still a void, somebody needs their rent paid in an emergency situation, if it's going to keep somebody from being evicted or somebody needs their utilities turned back on, we do have a family crisis fund that we can tap into for that. And then we were able to, an example that I loved is how we were able to provide groceries to a family in their home when all of the families were sick with COVID. So it's just, again, we're addressing the things that are going on behind the scenes inside families' homes that inevitably are going to affect a student's ability to come to school prepared to learn. So I wanted to, again, give you a snapshot of our outcomes from this last year. So for our case-managed students, 86% of them improved in academics, 96% improved in behavior, 82% improved in attendance. We had a 95% graduation rate among the high school students that were enrolled in CIS case management, and 100% overall stay-in-school rate for all of CIS students that we served in HEB. And for our clinical counseling program, 84% of the students who were enrolled in treatment made progress toward their goals. And that's kind of a hard number to digest if you don't know sort of how that compares to industry standard. But the industry standard in mental health counseling is 60% in a given span of time will make progress toward clinical goals. And again, we don't just drop students in that program at the end of the school year. That is continuous. So a student that received mental health counseling support last year who may be going into this next school year needing that support can go ahead and continue to receive that service for as long as they need to.
And do you refer them somewhere for the summertime?
Yes, we do. We connect everybody to any services that they need. If we can't be there to do it over the summer, we refer them, and then we can pick them back up at the start of the school year.
And can I ask another question while we're on this slide? So you gave us an industry standard for the clinical counseling, but I'm curious on the case management side, how do our students in this program maybe compare to other school districts that you work with?
I would say they're on par, or they're just as strong as what we're seeing. These particular data is very consistent across the board with our program in Tarrant County, and we have a minimum threshold that we are required to meet through TEA because they are a funder of the Communities in Schools program, and every year we're well above the threshold of what TEA has said is our standard for these metrics.
Thank you.
Yeah. So I wanted to also highlight one of the students who received the Award of Excellence at Keys, Janiyah Chandler. So she was awarded the 22 Award of Excellence, and she is a CIS student. And one of the things, this always means a lot to us, she actually chose to nominate her CIS case manager for Staff Mentor of the Year because she talked a lot about how she inspired her to do great things, to become a successful young woman, and that she's inspiring her to lead the way for others. She's going to be attending Tarrant County Community College, and she's going to be studying to become a dental hygienist. So we love that she has been empowered to pursue those goals, and we are just very humbled and honored that she would point to her CIS case manager as a positive influence toward that.
Awesome.
So one of the things that we are implementing in the school districts where we have programs is we have been measuring students' social and emotional learning competencies, the things that are measures really of school climate and a student's feelings about the degree to which they can perform successfully in school. And so we measure this twice. We measure this at the beginning of the school year when they first enroll in the Communities in Schools program, and then we measure it again at the end of their time working with CIS. And so what you're looking at on that chart, this is specifically for grades 3rd through 5th, and the next slide will be 6th through 12th. But the initial score is the blue line, so you can see where these students fell in these different areas, these different competencies, how they self-reported, how they felt according to, you know, how confident are you that you will be able to do hard work in the classroom this year? You know, questions around self-esteem, questions that are measures of their level of grit and their growth mindset. So how did they score at the beginning of the year, and then how did they respond at the end of a year of working with their social worker? So the blue line is their scores at the beginning, and the orange is at the end. And you can see across all of them that they were stronger at the end of the year than how they viewed themselves and their own abilities at the beginning of the school year. So that's extremely positive. It's definitely a trend that we want to see continue.
Ms. Gardner,
Yes.
I understand none of these. Explain to me what social awareness is.
Social awareness, I would have to dig into that one a little bit for you and get back to you on that specifically.
Okay.
Great question.
Thank you.
So here were the outcomes for our 6th through 12th grade. So again, we were really happy to see those scores bump up at the end of the year versus the beginning.
So are those percentages on the left side, the numbers?
I'm sorry?
Are the numbers on the left side a percentage of?
Their scores based on, this survey is out of Harvard. So there are thresholds of capacity based on what they consider to be sort of a minimum that they want to see kids at to be able to perform well in school. So the green is what they consider to be a minimum threshold of capacity for a child to do well. If you're under that, they consider that to be kind of a red flag and needing support. And if you're above that, obviously that's a positive thing. But no, those don't necessarily correlate to percentages. Like, for example, 25% compared to like 100%.
Their scores?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. I don't mean to cut it off so abruptly, but that that is the entirety of my presentation. But we are very excited to start a new year with you guys. We're going into this next school year planning to serve 11 campuses with full-time case management and have 2 mental health counselors serving primarily Trinity and Bell high schools. And I believe what they're currently planning to do is do 4 days a week at the high schools and carve out some time for the junior highs as well as needed.
Do you ever do any, like surveying with these students? Obviously, they're taking these assessments to understand, how they get this score on these competencies. But do you ever do any like surveys with them to get some feedback on how they feel about their case manager or social worker? It would be nice to have some verbatims, and the reason I think of that is because at the Communities in School luncheon this year, it was so nice to hear from some of the students. None of them were ours, but it was really nice to hear their stories and how they connected. And it would be nice to hear that from our own kids, maybe for next year's report.
Yeah, that's a great suggestion, and we can certainly do that for sure.
If we had 12 campuses last year and only 11 this year, what campus is being not serviced this year? And then are the other 11 the same?
We did make some changes at the elementary school based on size, but we replaced with some social workers that we're hiring this next year that will be HEB-ISD social workers. So the number of people working with the kids will remain the same, but we actually did make a few changes this year due to the size of some of our campuses and due to some of our changes, our attendance boundary adjustments. We definitely saw a trend moving, and we moved some of those people to the bigger campuses.
Okay.
Any additional questions? All right, as always, we greatly appreciate the work that Communities and Schools does in our district. We really appreciated it a few years ago when you went out and found us some money to keep us in the program. That was a game changer for us because we didn't know what was about to happen. And having those people in our school through the pandemic, and luckily for the time being, we have ESSER money to help us continue it. But it's been great to have that extra support for our students. So thank you so much for what you do.
No, we absolutely appreciate our partnership, so thank you so much. I appreciate your time tonight. Thank you.
Okay. Item 7.01, board resolution regarding COVID leave for the 2022-2023 school year.
I just want to see if you have any questions about this resolution.
Any questions on the resolution?
I just wondered if, I'm gonna try to find it. Where you get to the end and it's the now therefore part. Do we need to specify that the positive case of COVID-19 for yourself, for the employee? Do we need to specify that here, or is that a given?
I think that's okay, since we did specify earlier that it doesn't qualify for any employees' family members.
Okay.
But that's a really good catch. But I do think it's very clear. We made sure in the above paragraph that was spelled out pretty clearly.
Doesn't it say proof showing the employee to have a professional lab confirmed positive case of COVID-19?
Oh, maybe it doesn't.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
Yeah, it's on the fourth sentence.
And I'll just point out, I know I included this in the Friday update, but just so that you're aware, were any of the changes, were any changes to occur, or are any changes to occur with CDC or Texas, Tarrant County Public Health that change that 5-day requirement? Certainly we have the opportunity, or you do as a board, to go back and amend this. But we did add that caveat so that we would not be locked into anything if there were changes. Just really appreciate you all considering this, because we feel like it's a great message to send to our employees that we really do want them to take care of themselves should they become COVID positive.
We had this resolution in place last year. Are there any changes to the one in front of us tonight?
Yes, great question. Last year, we allowed up to 10 days, and again, that had to do with, at the time, the guidance we were receiving as far as what the minimum isolation period was. So the main change is the 5 days, and then the only other change, we had some employees last year who would turn in the documentation but not complete our required survey, which became problematic because that's how we had information to be able to notify them of when they could return to work. So we just made sure that we spelled that out a little more clearly, and that's why it says that an employee has to provide the lab confirmed positive and complete the district survey. Those are the only changes.
All right, item 7.02, quarterly investment reports for the quarter ending May 2022.
Good evening. Presented for you is the quarterly investment report from March 1st through end of May 2022, and if you've got any questions, I'd be happy to answer those.
Everyone memorize all the numbers, all the charts.
Our returns inch up ever so slowly, but
Yes.
they're a little better than they have been.
All right.
Not much.
If there's no questions on that, we'll move down to Power School renewals for the 2022-2023 school year. Any questions on those renewals? All right, item 7.04, RFP number 19-15E, catering and snack service supplemental. Any questions on that list? Item 7.05, RFP number 22-07, excess workers' compensation renewal. Any questions? General liability, umbrella, and commercial auto insurance renewal. Any questions? Engagement letter for independent audit. Any questions? 7.08, financial statements for the month of May 2022. Mr. Williams.
Okay, present for you tonight the financial statements ended May 31st, 2022. As you can see, in your detail, the general fund had a fund balance of, gotta see it, 194, 328, 341. Yeah, we need your glasses, Joe. That represents revenues over expenditures of 51,459,018. As of May 31st, we're at 62.82% of the budget. We're currently sitting, of course, at 9/10 of or 90% of our school year, so that means we're in good shape there. Overall, the expenditures are slightly down due to the payroll reclassification to ESSER 2 fund. Kind of starting to sound like a broken record there, but we'll do that through the end of the year. So everything is tracking normally in the general fund. The expenditure matrix, or better known as the Ressler report. Payroll is sitting at 107,844,726. That's 86%. Of course, we've been saying this every month too. That's typically we run 87, but because we've reclassified those ESSER 2 funds, it's skewing that number a little bit. And as such, that also skews our utility and instructional supply numbers, which utilities typically run about 2%. Now they're running about 3%. Instructional supplies typically run about 1%. Now they're running, that 1.8 million is running at 2%. Food service fund, as we've said all year, that fund has done extremely well because we don't have enough workers, which is sad to say, but that continues to be a struggle. Fund balance of 10,174,046. That's revenues over expenditures of 3,791,700. Total expenditures as of 5/31 are at 75.12%, well below the 90% we're at right now during the year. So everything is tracking very well, and that department continues to operate very well.
Dobie, is that problem getting worse or better, or about the same?
It's kind of hard to say in the summer. We don't know until we start school year up where we're going to end up. But we ended the year down, I want to say, Cicely may know, 30. No, food service.
Food service.
30, 32, I think is the number I'm remembering. Now, custodians, that number's not looking good.
Okay.
So am I correct that they've continued the free lunch program for another year, or is that still?
No, it ended June.
Yeah, something,
I haven't, well, if it is, it's.
something
I
at the
haven't
federal
kept
level
up with it.
passed last week. We'll have to try to find it.
So I'll have to research that.
Okay.
That's a new one for me. I must have been on vacation or something last week. Debt service fund, fund balance of 43,675,848. That represents revenues over expenditures of 30,695,171. Of course, we've made our first debt payment. We will make our next debt payment in August, and we are already collected more than what we budgeted to collect for that fund, so we're in great shape there. So, pre-K CK fund balance of 247,925. That's revenues over expenditures of 227,910. Expenditures are at 76.77%. So that program did really well this year also. Special revenue funds, of course, these funds are self-sufficient, as we say every month. We basically spend what we get, and many of these funds are, and I don't know that I've said this, but I think y'all know this, they're multi-year funds, so therefore they don't track exactly normally like some of our other funds that are year to year. So basically we budget what we spend each year and what we don't spend if a lot of it is available to roll forward to the next year. So the $3.2 million deficit is mainly due to the, again, ESSER 2 fund payroll reclassification and a $414,000 in ESSER 3 that wasn't submitted to TEA until June, so it's not showing up on those statements yet, on the May statement yet. Total expenditures as of 5/31 were at 42.28% of what was budgeted. So all those programs continue to track normally. Campus Activity Fund, $2,962,734 fund balance. That's revenues over expenditures of $10,215. That hasn't changed much from last month since school's out. That program continues to, or did very well this year with all our kiddos back. So, bond funds, fund balance of $26,586,790. That's expenditures over revenues of $6,687,727. As you know, like I say, we aren't issuing bonds, so all we're doing is spending money out of that fund, other than interest revenue that comes in. So, and the majority of those are, finishing up projects we're working on, paying retainages, that type of things. And most of the remainder, or all of the remainder of that, as we've said, will go to Bel Air Elementary on the rebuild. So, and lastly, we have the locally defined capital projects fund. Fund balance $47,811,534. Again, that's expenditures over revenues of $619,752. And again, those are funds that we don't put revenue in unless the board decides to do that, which we will do in a minute. So, any questions with that?
Any questions on these financial statements? All right, we'll move on to budget transfer and amendment request.
Mr. Williams, I just forwarded you and Dr. Harrington an email that maybe Fred and I were both thinking of for the meal extension.
Okay.
It mentions it. I don't know that it has a lot of detail.
Okay, I'll check it out. Thank you. Budget transfers for the month. Most of those are very typical type budget transfers for this time of year, nothing out of the ordinary. The only thing out of the ordinary would be the transfer into the locally defined fund, and I sent out a Friday update a couple of weeks ago detailing all of that. We'd been talking about a transfer in $8 million, which we can do that if we so desire, if the board so desires. It's fund balance. Y'all have the ability to move those in and out of different funds as you just see fit. What I did was present a transfer of $3,100,000 and some odd thousand. I don't have that number in front of me. I think it may be down at the bottom of that page. Yes, $3,193,414. That will transfer funds from unassigned fund balance into an assigned fund balance account, or the locally defined is the main fund we use for that. That's just holding in, I don't want to say tradition, but what has typically done in the past. As you know, last year we had $20 million some odd dollars in excess revenues over expenditures. A lot of that was the transition grant funds created a lot of that, almost $12 million of that. We also rolled forward, which we've done every year, or y'all have done every year prior to me being here. Some of the up to 10% of what is available for roll forward into their budgets for next year, which is kind of a budgeting tool or a budget management tool, and that left $3,193,000 to equal out that $20 million. Now, if we decide next month, August, we want to come back and put another $5 in there, we can certainly do that. You're just going to move it from an unassigned category, that's what TEA looks at, your unassigned fund balance, because that's free game for to use in your general fund budget, to an assigned fund balance, which means you have a specified purpose for those funds. Most school districts, that would be to do renovations, build new schools, do something, but it can be for just about anything, really. Buy buses, or you can do whatever you need to do with that. So,
I think I would appreciate a recommendation from you and the team on,
okay, yeah, Dr. Harrington, I can get.
And what should
Okay,
happen.
because like I say, we still got August that we can do that for this current year, or like I say, you can do that at any time, any month, any time.
So right now, the recommendation would be the $3.2 million, basically?
Right, yeah, just like I said, I wanted to kind of stay in line with what had been done in the past, kind of looking at what our revenue was over last year. And then we could talk about that more and if we want to do more.
I
put
mean,
some
it's
more into
also
local
important, I
and
mean, from a board perspective, to know what the needs are. So,
Yes.
you know, if there's a reason to transfer more, then we'd like to know, you know, why. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Dr. Harrington and I can certainly come up with whatever reasons we need for that.
Do we have needs?
Do we have needs? Yes.
There's always needs.
There's
We know
always
that.
needs. I can answer that question. Always needs.
Okay, any questions on the budget transfers? All right, school resource officer contracts for the 2022-2023 school year.
Just I'm gonna stand, I think I'm the next 4 or 5 agenda items, so I'm gonna stand right here and address any questions that I can.
All right, any questions on the,
They're in
SRO
line with
contracts?
last year. And so probably in the future, we're going to have to consider, with the cost of everything else in the world, I would expect those to go up a little bit. But we'll work with the cities when we get closer to that. But it is very similar to last year. And what's always an important reminder, in those contracts, those SROs can work up to 24 more additional days, 192 hours. So that's football games, sporting events, extracurricular, et cetera. We seldomly ever use all those 192 hours, but we do. But we have the access to those, and that's assigned by the principal. So that's just an important part of the contract as well.
Conrad, do we have numbers on which officers have reached the 192? Because you said they seldomly do. My understanding was they frequently do. Do we have the report
No,
on
but
that?
I don't have a report for that, but I think Robbie Ball typically would track that, but I'll look that up for you, Chris, and see if I can find that. The reason I say seldomly, I don't remember signing off on a lot this year for any additional, but I'm not saying we didn't, but I don't know that we went way over 192, but I'll check that out for you and see. I could be wrong in that statement, I just don't remember signing off on a lot of that this year. But
Yeah, and I haven't reviewed the numbers to say specifically, but conversations with the chiefs were that when the year was over, they had used up all their time because the chiefs then had no opportunity to use those officers because they had used all that time.
So they may have used that time, but I don't know that we're going over that time, that additional 192 hours.
That's fair.
Would maybe a better way to say that.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't recall. Now, there have been a few events where, of course, we pay additional SROs when we have our bigger football games and things of that nature. We pay that, which is typically at a rate of $50 per hour, or if there's a site commander, $55 per hour, which those numbers we've held fast to for a while. But what I'm saying is I don't know how many officers we went over the 192 hours, but I'll find out.
Thank you.
Of course.
All right, any other questions on the SROs? All right, out-of-state, out-of-country student travel. Looks like there's one trip on here. Any questions on that? All right, contract between HEBISD and communities and schools of Greater Tarrant County. Any questions on that item? 7.13, organization listed as extracurricular activities under 19 TAC. Any questions on that list? Has that list changed much?
No, sir, it hasn't changed much. Just a reminder, what you're basically approving is that we allow those students to have excused absences if they participate during the school day. And that's the importance of approving that list.
Let me ask Dr. Harrington a quick question on this, because I had a parent ask me this last year about the car auto racing. Did we add that, or did that parent work it out specifically with that school?
I'm not familiar with
That
that.
was a Viridian parent.
I know they reviewed one to look at the future, but I don't believe they added one at this time. I
Okay.
don't believe. So I do believe they worked through that one incident. The other piece of this list is if these are organizations that at times also they will participate as a school and with a teacher. And so they're not even absent then. Those become this, we have to make sure this list is current because those students are now present, just like a field trip. But we also allow them to be excused if they're not with a teacher or sponsor, but are participating in certain activities that correlate with the school activities.
Yeah, there might be a competition they attend, but it's a one-off, and so, but we have the ability to excuse that absence. which is important because it encourages participation.
All right, any more questions on that? All right, Student Code of Conduct, 2022-2023 revisions.
And if I may, I just want to do 2 or 3 things on that. One, I want to thank Mr. Fuller, who's here this evening. If there's any really nitty-gritty that we get into, he can address some of that with us. But also, Mary Stokic, she really did a great job, and while she was serving as our interim for a little while, we tasked her with a couple of challenges, and she really took the responsibility and coordinated with Ray to work really hard on this. Really, in short, there are very few additions or changes. If you notice, we did include the red line, so it's almost all editing. But the most important thing that I think we did this year is we moved to the TASB model, which is much more consistent with area school districts. Our attorneys were pleased to see us move to the TASB model. And really what that helps Ray do, who typically manages this project, is when we do get an update, it slides in very nicely. We know exactly what section to put it in. It updates it for us, and it really keeps us much more current. And then when we want to post it back on the website, if there are any amendments or changes, it's a very clean system for us to do. And so in that red line, you'll see that there are a few additions that are in red. That may be things that were specific language for HEB. For example, the cell phone policy, if you see that, it's not redlined. It was just added to because the language was slightly different than what TASB would recommend. So again, no significant changes to report, but we're very pleased to move to the TASB model, which we also did for the handbook, the student handbook. And so now, when we get policy and updates, we're able to just immediately move those over and not have to reformat the entire thing.
And I've got to also thank Ray and Mary. This is a huge undertaking, making this conversion, and having this done and in place. I really appreciate this move. This is the right move to go to the TASB model.
And if we're really being honest, Brandon really needs to thank Mary when he sees her. She got this done for him before he had to take this task on and get it ready for
You've been
this
here
board
8
meeting.
hours, you got it memorized, right?
That's right. We were going to really test his skills, but genuinely, it's something that we probably should have done a few years ago. And just the timing was perfect, and Mary had the time to do that, and she has the attention to detail, so she did a great job.
That's great.
All right, any other questions on the Code of Conduct?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Application of expedited waiver.
Any questions? No, I decided the waivers go through the superintendent's office, so I am going to keep the waivers, but I will come to the dais or to the podium.
Hilarious.
The one thing, just so everyone understands, these are the staff development waivers. We're allowed up to 2,100 minutes, which basically is the equivalent of 5 days. When the state converted everything from days to minutes, they converted the 5 days you could take in professional development to 2,100 minutes, which is 420 minutes times 5. It's still the 5 days, just in minutes. And so we use most of these minutes in our calendar, not all as full days. These also fund some of our half days.
All right, any questions on the waiver? All right, let's get into some board policy. Item 7.16, deletion of board policy CL local.
So these next 5 policies are actually, I want you to know the process that we work through. When the District of Innovation Plan is finalized, that is sent to our TASB consultant, who goes through it with a fine-tooth comb and looks for any policy changes that need to be made in alignment with that. So this first policy is simply removing, we're deleting this policy because there is no longer an option in the DOI for the energy lights, and so that policy becomes null and void. Any questions about that one?
No questions? All right. Revision of board policy DBA local.
And so as part of our DOI, we have added world languages, which you're going to see reflected in 2 different policies. This one's dealing with certification. And what we've done is we are adding that to the list of previously CTE courses, where if we find a qualified teacher who has the industry experience and or the degree and work toward a certification, but they don't yet have a certification, we can hire them. I do want you to know we have utilized this for CTE previously, but what we do in HEB-ISD is if we do take advantage of this part of our DOI, we place the employee on an addendum and they still have to complete the certification within 1 year. But because this is in our policy, that we are previously using this exemption for CTE, she went ahead and added world languages.
All right, any questions on DBA local? All right, addition of board policy DCA local.
So we have utilized this before in our DOI, but now there is a requirement that you include this in policy. That's why it's a brand new policy. And this allows us for employees who come to us with 5 of the last 8 years in a Texas public school, they are actually only on a probationary contract for 1 year. And then they roll to a term contract the following year, whereas newer employees have 3 years on a probationary. This actually allows us, were we to need additional time to evaluate an employee, we can provide you with notice of that and allow you as a board to vote for us to extend that probationary contract for 1 additional year. So again, not new to our process, but something that now requires a policy reference.
All right, any questions on DCA local? All right, revision to board policy DK local.
And again, this deals with world languages, but this is on the campus assignment end. So same concept, just a different portion of policy.
Any questions? All right, 7.20, revision to board policy EEB local.
And so because of the reference of our Spanish immersion class sizes in our DOI, this needed to be also updated.
Any questions? All right, revision to board policy DBD local.
So this is a policy that deals with employment requirements and restrictions related to conflicts of interest. And because we are a continuous improvement district and we try to practice that when we see an opportunity for improvement or a need for clarification, as I described in the Friday update, this is something we've worked closely with Dr. Harrington's office, Human Resources, the executive leadership team, and our attorney to really provide an added layer of protection for not only the district but for our employees and give them some clarification on what they should and should not be accepting in the way of gifts. And so we've worked with our attorney as well as TASB to make sure that this is aligned to policy allowances, and we will actually be rolling this information out at our nuts and bolts for employees and letting them know about these proposed changes so that they can ensure that their staffs are also made aware. And of course, it won't be shared with the staff until it's been considered on the July 25th meeting, but we are going to use the opportunity of having our administrators together to go over the proposed changes for this. Any questions?
Any questions on DBD local? All right, revisions to board policy EF local.
So I wrote also about this in the Friday update, but all districts received the opportunity. We got several options from TASB about the way that we could address any necessary changes to our instructional materials policy. And so I'm just going to quickly remind you of the 3 options. The first was to keep our existing EF local in place. The second was to make revisions to it based on several sample templates or suggested policies they provided. And the third was that districts could actually separate out instructional materials from library materials and create 2 separate policies. So in reviewing these very closely with our TASB consultant, as well as with Dr. Harrington, Kira Elledge, and really looking at our existing process and how well it is working, we did not see any value in separating out the 2 policies because, frankly, what we do for our instructional material review is the same that we would do for our library material review. And so that process is working well. It's a well-oiled machine, and it's been very successful. So we chose to keep our existing policy, but we always like to look at, is there value in anything that TASB is providing us? And we did see some things that would be helpful for clarification, and those are the track changes that you see in the policy that we're bringing for your consideration. So it's really taking an opportunity to take advantage of some of the verbiage and language that TASB is providing, but keep our policy and our practices in place. Any questions about this policy?
Any questions? All right. We have 3 action items this evening. Item 8.01, consider approval of the 2022-2023 HEB ISD Texas Teacher Evaluation and Support System, TTES.
So we have actual timelines for all employee appraisals, but this particular timeline always has to come to the board for approval because it's based on the commissioner's rules for evaluations, and those pertain to our teachers specifically. So this is simply showing you what our timeline is that we develop locally in alignment with our school calendar, but also in meeting all of the requirements that our staff have for not only training of what's expected when an evaluator comes into their classroom, but also making sure they have notice and ample time to prepare for evaluations, et cetera. And so that's the document that we're bringing to you tonight.
Any questions on this calendar? I will accept a motion.
I move the board approve the 2022-2023 HBISD teacher appraisal calendar as submitted.
Second.
I have a motion, a second, for the board to approve the 2022-2023 HEB ISD teacher appraisal calendar as submitted. Please vote. That motion passes. All right. Consider approval of 2022-2023 HEB ISD T-test appraiser list.
And you will notice that all of our current administrators are listed on this list or included on this list. And if you see somebody in italics, that means that this is their first year in the role and that they'll be getting the appropriate training to allow them to evaluate teachers using T-tests. We do have one administrative vacancy that we're still waiting to fill, and we have interviews scheduled for tomorrow for that. So certainly when that is done, we'll update this and get it back to you for a second approval.
Any questions on the appraiser list? I'll accept a motion.
I move that the board approve the updated T-test appraisal list as submitted.
Second.
I have a motion, a second, for the board to approve the updated T-test appraiser list as submitted. Please vote. That motion passes. All right. Consider approval of updated 2022-2023 employment dates of the school calendar.
So after coming to you for approval on this item, we have received some requests for some minor tweaks to a couple of the beginning and ending dates based on staff needs, and those are marked in red. So the only thing that this changes is the end dates for 3 of our calendars based on needs and or employees needing to switch from one calendar to another.
Any questions? Accept a motion.
I move that the board approve the updated 2022-2023 employment dates of the school calendar.
Second.
I have a motion, a second, that the board approves the updated 2022-2023 employment dates of the school calendar. Please vote. That motion passes. We are down to open forum number 2. No cards? Okay.
Mr. Romero, may I make one other comment, please? So I know 47.5 isn't a fun number for vacancies, and I just wanted to give you a quick update because while we've been in this meeting, our coordinators have been down in HR. And so we actually have 39.5 vacancies now. So I wanted to share that.
Can I ask a question about that, Cicely? So I've gotten a couple of teachers that have called me and said, if at an elementary teacher call me and a junior high teacher call me and say, if there's not enough teachers in their pod, what happens?
So
there's still not enough subs.
Right. So what I will say is we have been working as we did last year to make sure that we have a nice cadre of subs ready to step in and be long-term subs. I'll remind you that we started the year with almost 50 long-term subs last year, not because of vacancies only, but because of vacancies as well as medical leaves, maternity leave, et cetera. And so certainly we've been working this summer to build that cadre back up because many of those folks were hired as teachers with us, which is a great thing. We are continuing to recruit. We are continuing to go through and comb applications. And as I mentioned earlier, just today we received 9 recommendations and already I've received word we have some more that have come in this evening. So while I'm not confident we'll fill them all, I am fairly certain that we will fill another dozen or more, and we will continue to look for those. We actually just got an invitation today to reach out to some alternatively certified candidates from one of the local programs. They sent us their entire list of their new cadre of students who've been accepted. We will, Mr. Martinez and Mr. DeFilippis, as well as Mr. Hill, who's here training him, will reach out and make contact with all those folks. And several of you have continued to send us resumes and names, and we've been reaching out to those. So I don't have a firm answer for you, but I can tell you we're going to be prepared to make sure someone is in those classrooms. Our next big hiring batch will be our teacher assistants, because our teacher assistants, we also have some vacancies there. But that is one of the goals that they've been working on this summer, is to replenish our sub pool.
All right, now we're down to other business. Opportunity for board members to request items to be placed on future board agendas.
I have one. I'd like to put on the agenda that we discuss the restrooms at the softball and baseball fields. And I would discuss it now, but that's what I'm putting it on the agenda for.
Okay, we have a second?
Second.
All right, we will get that on a future agenda. All right, discussion of the board activity chart. I have not looked at it. It's probably here somewhere. It looks like we have everything pretty well covered all the way through August, so I think we're in good shape on everything. All right, thank you. All right, we do not need a closed session. So I guess at this time we'll go ahead and go into closed session, or just take a 15-minute break. Okay. Yeah, our level 3, I think the participants were asked to be here at 7:30. All right. So right now we'll begin a 15-minute break.
I know. Gotta go to the ladies' room though.
Well, the hard parts have been done. We've had one cell, we've had one. Exactly. But the two hard things are things that never.
Well, that's good. You gotta take advantage of it.
I hired an admin. That's helpful.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I hired a full-time admin.
How'd you find him?
I hired a virtual assistant service. Frickin'
Really? How does that work?
I mean, you've had virtual assistants before, right?
but not for helping me to build websites or to support. So this is the first secretary type thing.
Huh.
So how do they virtually pick up your dry cleaning?
They don't pick up dry cleaning.
How do they run and get you lunch?
They don't run and get you lunch, but they
Make
can
your
order
coffee.
Uber lunch. They can order Uber lunch. But they answer the phone, my email.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
I should have done it sooner. It's been so far it's been a huge.
Fantastic. That's great.
First time I've ever had an admin too. It's different. Totally unrelated, and when you got time, and certainly not tonight. I got some ideas on there.
Okay.
Not that the web designers have any ideas. But I haven't done that.
This should the legislature is the legislature, and they do what they want to do. But it is governed by SBOE, and so I have friends now in SBOE, so I've had to talk to them.
Cicely, you're awesome. You're bringing that number down while we're in the board meeting.
I was like, I gotta tell them, and I texted him, I said, is it okay, 47.5, we know we got stamps.
Oh, that's awesome.
And they're down there working, so I'm like.
I put a little scratch through. I was like, way to go. You okay with you? They look quiet. You know, I'm not quiet. All good?
You know, I have nothing to look forward to. I'm really trying to get it for you.
Good talk.
Oh, come on, I mean, like, no.
How you doing with your time? I try. Try to maintain positivity.
I don't want to screenshot them, but I'll show you.
Okay. Yeah, don't screenshot.
Does this need to be in blue ink? Does this need to be in blue ink?
She did provide some pins.
Not doing it.
Good job. This is first presentation, right? Big one, in the new role? New role?
Yes, and actually, if you'd like, anytime we've been working on really working with us on, oh, you need this, oh, we should do this, here's what Plano's doing, here's what so-and-so's doing. So, if you have any questions, I'm happy to.
I love what's already in place. Good. What's your day about?
That's it, thank you so much, Jody, I appreciate it.
So, can I answer your question? I have 2 US-based employees, and then I have 3 overseas-based employees that are full-time, work for me and work for everybody else. One of which is working for employees. Now, most of my overseas employees do the 80% of the web development work, and they have no custody of the system. And then they back up my US-based employees for support. So they're doing, in my organization, about 80% of my work is done overseas.
Where are they?
2 of them are in the Philippines, and 1 of them is in India. And then I have contractors I use that are not full-time, that are one contractor in India and 1 in Brazil. So I have 2 part-time employees and I have 4 full-time.
Did you contact them directly, or is there a go-between?
No, they work directly with me.
They do.
They hire, there's no go-between, they're my 1099s.
All right.
I 1099 them.
What they do with that is their own.
Exactly, because they're not US based. I have never had an administrator, so it's all been behind the scenes for the most part. Even if we got a support call, we might have logged in and something called Airtable, and they might do it, but they're not doing it because.
It's the whole reason why.
So, I've studied and worked, and virtual assistants are fabulous in comparison to US-based systems. They're less expensive than just.
Is it the same person every day?
What?
Your virtual assistant?
Yeah, yeah. So it's just like I hired a secretary here, she just doesn't live here. So her name is May, and I went through a whole interview process and all that stuff. You know, I posted a job listing, got 100 applicants, narrowed it down to 15, gave them an assignment. I had to, because she'd be answering the phone, I wanted to make sure that they spoke perfect English, all that kind of stuff. So I hired an admin to answer the phone, work my email, and basically, because I'm now bogged down, we have 510 clients. And so now I've hit, and I told you this was coming up with the bottleneck, I'm spending 9% just distributing work.
Yeah.
So that's an administrative function, and I couldn't scale, I've really,
Yeah.
so, but it's, I have a full-time secretary isn't US based, which about a 12-hour difference.
Yeah.
So she works, I guess, I don't know if it's Tuesday through Saturday or if it's Sunday through Thursday. I don't know which.
Oh, no, I didn't mean to interrupt. I thought you were talking to.
So my first day.
Change your step.
Yeah, and she, yeah, I did. It is, but, and, I use service. But that's part of my Oh, yeah, yes. I mean, we're talking about drilling. First up, base salary $650 plus benefits.
$650 a month?
Correct. So.
Is she exclusive to you, or is she?
She's exclusive to me. So, after she worked